In this presentation, we are going to be looking more in depth at the effect that the COVID-19 pandemic had on low-skilled workers in the northeast of England, and specifically those that worked in industries that rely heavily on personal and face-to-face interaction. We'll be evaluating a retraining scheme aiming to reduce the skill gap caused by the pandemic, with the goal of increasing human capital by enabling workers to enter jobs that require higher qualifications. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought a variety of issues to the UK. Not only were millions of individuals thrown out of work, but the mix of jobs that emerged post pandemic were different from those that were lost. People with the lowest incomes and educational attainment have been disproportionately affected, putting strains on achieving inclusive growth and potentially increasing income inequality. So, why the Northeast? Well, in the 2021 census, the location with the lowest proportion of people in the UK with higher education qualifications was the Northeast, with only 28.6% of residents reaching level 4 or above. This is compared to 46.7% of those living in London. Furthermore, following the pandemic, there was an increase of 36,500 people claiming unemployment benefits in the Northeast alone. If we look at Sunderland, for an example, where citizens reside in the 12th percentile of the UK for least highly qualified, and as you can see, the percentage of adults with level 4 qualifications or above is far below the UK average. Therefore, a high proportion of workers in the Northeast are employed in low skilled jobs and are likely to have found themselves out of work and in need of retraining. A common example for these jobs are found within the hospitality industry. So, why these sectors? Well, firstly, we want to look at what a low skilled worker actually is. A low skilled worker refers to someone with few formal qualifications working in jobs that do not require higher level education. In the UK, from January to March 2020 and October to December 2021, the number of workers in the hospitality sector fell by 3.6%. This compares to the 1.3% decline in jobs across all industries. Using information from the 2021 census, consumer spending on hospitality started to increase in May 2021, but still remains less than the pre-pandemic levels.
As seen in the graphs, employment in wholesale and retail, as well as in food and accommodation, were most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. In Figure 2, you can see the initial decrease occurring in March 2020, and the jobs have still not reached pre-pandemic levels. Now drawing both of these areas together, you can see that hospitality accounts for 5.4% of the business population in the Northeast. Therefore, proportionally, it is likely that more people from the Northeast could have been structurally unemployed relative to other areas of the UK. But what is structural unemployment? As stated by the Reserve Bank of Australia, structural unemployment occurs when there is a mismatch between the jobs that are available and the people looking for work. This mismatch could be because job seekers don't have the skills required to do the jobs, or because the available jobs are too far away from the job seekers. Following the loss of jobs during the COVID-19 pandemic, these low-skilled employees working in these affected sectors lacked the ability to find alternative employment. The transition to move away from offline work was accelerated by COVID-19, resulting in structural unemployment and thus a skill gap. The last major structural change in the UK was experienced in the early 1980s during the closure of the steel industry and textiles in the UK. This created a surge in unemployment to 12% of the working age population, being typically older and lower skilled, and many of these workers never worked again. Although some industries managed to transition to a digital/online position, this is not possible for hospitality and retail workers. It is clear that COVID-19 has been the biggest catalyst for digital transformation for businesses where it is possible. Employees have had to adjust to working remotely, and employers have had to reimagine how they do business in a remote-first world. Employees not only need to adapt to these changes, but embrace the opportunities they propose. Pre-pandemic, Parliament estimated that the existing digital skills gap sees the UK lose out on £63 billion in GDP every year. This is only set to accelerate unless action is taken.
Firstly, I will outline our policy proposal. So our policy is a retraining scheme for former hospitality workers in the northeast of England, where COVID-19 has severely impacted this sector, leaving many workers unemployed or forced to find other low-skilled employment. The policy aims to increase human capital and address the persistent skill gap, allowing workers to enter higher remunerated industries, reducing the regional income disparities which have been worsened by COVID-19. So I will now discuss the specific industries that hold skill shortages that our training will be targeting. So studies have shown that the Northeast area already holds infrastructure and documented growth within the following industries: technology, advanced manufacturing, health, life sciences, and energy. There's strong evidence in the life sciences and pharmaceutical sector that they perform well during the pandemic with noted growth and strong performance. The advanced manufacturing sector already accounts for 16% of the Northeast GVA, and it's noted that in the Northeast area, it holds significant capabilities in offshore energy and subsea technologies due to its well-placed access to key windshore development sites. Within these different sectors, there's been a common need for increased digital skills, with 23% of employers saying that their current workforce lack the basic digital skills necessary. 20% of the skill gaps present in the Northeast area across these sectors are a result of the introduction of new technology. This increased need for technological skills reflects the reshaping of information networks post-COVID, noting that there's been an unprecedented rise in the number of AI across all industries as businesses were forced to adapt. The infrastructure already exists for these industries to develop. However, many businesses lack the capital and willingness, particularly following the uncertainty and output decrease during the pandemic, to invest in human capital, resulting in a persistent skill shortage within these sectors that our policy hopes to address. Furthermore, I will now outline our scheme's implementation process. So our process begins with extensive research and collaboration with industry-specific business and professionals to create or modify an effective curriculum. These courses will be formulated both online and in person, with teaching taking place at local colleges throughout the Northeast area. The government will be responsible for targeting and advertising the subsidy to relevant businesses within the targeted sectors, and will market and target the population using the National Employment Census. In order to ensure that the training is being undertaken effectively, the business recipients of the subsidy will be required to submit biannual reviews detailing the progression of the employee.
I will now go into some of the more specific details of the programme in terms of who would be partaking and the viability of the programme from a monetary perspective. The equivalent qualification level is 3 to 5, depending on the recipient's prior level of education. To be eligible, they must have a minimum education of GCSE mathematics and English and be between 25 to 64 years of age to ensure the programme is focusing on retraining. Our programme is designed to target those in the hospitality industry who are in the northeast of England and have been impacted by the pandemic and subsequently left the industry since the first UK lockdown. Moreover, our scheme will resemble a higher education apprenticeship in that recipients of the programme are required to commit to an employment contract to create incentives for businesses to invest. I'm now going to speak about how we're going to acquire the funds to carry out this project and how the money will be allocated. Funding will be divided between a government subsidy and business investment, which will be based on a percentage of their earnings to create a more equitable extraction of funds. This funding will be transferred to local colleges to carry out programmes. Funds will be distributed into curriculum building, advertising, administration, and monitoring costs. Now I'll go a little further into our estimations of the cost of the programme. Based on these population and education statistics, as well as using an estimation of the percentage of those who work in hospitality services, we have estimated that 143,837 people in the northeast of England would be both without higher education qualification and in the hospitality industry. To go a step further, using 36% as an estimation of hospitality workers who have left the sector as a result of the COVID pandemic, we've calculated 52,305 people would be eligible for the programme throughout the northeast of England. Based on the average cost of an apprenticeship in the UK, we have used £800 per person for the course, which accounts to a total cost of the programme being £41,844,000. We suggest that up to 60% of these costs would be government funded, depending on the business earnings, to widen the range of the businesses that are able to take part in the scheme. We'd like to note these calculations are based on a variety of research papers, and to more credibly understand the financial side of this programme, we'd need to conduct our own more detailed research. To go further, we need productivity statistics and company financial statistics to determine the length of the programme and the length of subsequent employment contracts. Now we look at weighing up the costs and benefits of the programme. Firstly, the cost of expenditure of the government budget, as well as business investment, comes in the form of foregone revenue and income, which could have been put towards alternative projects. Also, there's an initial productivity loss between the initial investment and the returns on the investment of the trained employee. However, benefits on a firm level in the long run include greater employee productivity and financial returns. From a macroeconomic perspective, as human capital increases, there's a greater demand for labour and thus higher wages. GDP increases as a result of higher productivity, and as a result of higher wages, this reduces the regional socio-economic gap within the UK.
The first participation barrier is perception. Starting with the Skills and Employment Survey, we can see that 70% of low-skilled workers that were interviewed stated that they did not need any additional training. This is so fundamental because we know that perceptions ultimately are unique to an individual and underpin their willingness to actually take part in such a scheme, which definitely underpins its success. We also know that these perceptions are unique and can be difficult to change, which is why it's so important. A lot of studies show that there is a strong correlation between low skill and low participation in training, even though these workers are the ones most at risk of losing their job. So why might this be? Well, firstly, they might have a kind of stigma around training and think that it's something you do when you're young, not at that stage of their career. Secondly, after years of experience within an industry, you might not actually classify yourself as low skilled. And if you did see yourself as low skilled, you might be too embarrassed to come forward and say that. Thirdly, you might not fully understand the benefits of retraining or upskilling, or even know about the opportunities to start with. And finally, when a scheme like this is subsidised and the cost is low, if not nothing, quality signals can come in and psychological effects can come in. And since these workers are not actually cost burdening from this training, they might feel that the perceived value of the training is less so, and that might discourage them from participating. In order to target and mitigate low participation rates, our policy could have a coinciding media campaign to raise awareness of previous success stories. We could join up services and provide complementary careers guidance specific to those of low skill, or even being able to guarantee some certainty in next steps after completing the scheme. It can be really daunting moving into a new environment that you know is highly concentrated by high-skilled workers. And finally, just promoting a shared vision of lifelong learning. Evidence from the OECD, Ofsted, and the Skills and Employment Survey show that publicly funded schemes often lack relevance and quality. This can damage course retention and ultimately the effectiveness of a scheme like ours. We know that the workers that we're targeting will have a wealth of experience within a particular industry, and it can be really challenging to transition that knowledge to a completely new sector when retraining. So we know that it's important that a scheme isn't too difficult because a setback could discourage a worker from completing a course. As well as this, if a course is too long and seems too unobtainable, we know that a worker again might be discouraged. So the solutions that we're putting in place are to ensure that the course is engaging and incentivizes workers to finish it. So contextualizing the course and ensuring that it's tailored to the previous experience that the workers have is fundamental. We've seen a really positive example of this that's been really effective with the Army's approach to literacy training. And ultimately, it's about providing training in itself to those doing the training and ensuring that programs gain enough funding to be able to offer flexible options, whether that be hybrid, which I know Jake will go on to speak about, but ultimately ensuring that enough effort is put into tailoring the course content so that it is extremely engaging to those who have a different background who are transitioning.
Two very significant constraints are financial and time related. Workers who have to take time off work to train may suffer from foregone wages, and the affordance of basic needs may be compromised. A slimmer budget also means that workers may struggle to purchase equipment, such as laptops, which are necessary for online learning. Furthermore, the burden of childcare increases as these workers need to find childcare during additional reskilling hours. Finally, transportation can have a significant cost if workers need to travel far to attend these classes, and this can lead to a significant loss of time and money spent on transport simply getting there. For these reasons, we will ensure the flexibility in location so that workers who can't afford laptops can attend in person. We'll also be flexible in the timing and length of each lesson, which means that workers won't have to forego wages in the process, and they can fit them into busy schedules. Furthermore, we're also flexible in the location of these lessons, and this will mitigate the costs associated with travel, as it will provide our services in a variety of locations, ensuring no workers are burdened by significant journeys. In order to tackle a loss of earnings, we would also look to extending the legal obligations of paid training leave. However, it is important to note that during a career program created in Ontario, Canada, all financial constraints were covered through this program, but data showed that these individuals actually participated less in training, thus demonstrating the importance of perception, as previously mentioned by Katrin, and also the importance of addressing all barriers rather than just financial ones. Further barriers are associated with accessibility. Initially, some low-skilled workers may lack digital literacy, meaning they lack the skills to use a computer or a laptop, which would be required for online learning. They might also be hard to reach, as many low-skilled workers wouldn't consider themselves to be low-skilled, and therefore may not consider themselves applicable for the program. This is where an information gap may unfold. In a study carried out by Brookings, it was found that up to 80% of adults don't know about online learning platforms, such as a massive open online course, and this may be mirrored in our project. Finally, many of these low-skilled workers may struggle as their cognitive skills erode with age. This might leave older workers without the skills to learn effectively. Our solution for this is we have the option of online courses and in-person teaching, so anyone who is unable to access learning through a computer can still be reached. We will also have mentors who can help fill the information gap, as they provide advice and information to workers who may not realise that they're eligible for such training or may not have considered it before. Also, as previously mentioned by Kat, we will organise a coinciding multimedia campaign, raising awareness of training benefits to workers, as well as those opportunities available. The success of a training scheme like ours is completely reliant on participation rates. This quote from the OECD effectively summarises the argument posed by Katrin and I, as we've addressed the barriers of perception, retention, and accessibility. Therefore, in order to be effective, our scheme needs to raise awareness, be accessible, and be relevant.